What's going on with your gang? Today we got this deadly mountain lion devoured boy at school in front of his class. That's crazy. Nobody helped, nobody did anything, nobody, like, they just sat and watched. I haven't even watched this video yet, but just telling by the title, like, in front of his class, that shit's crazy. But we gonna see how true to that title it is, you feel me? So let's get right up into this video. RIP that boy. May he rest in peace. Oh man.
Playing with your friends in the school playground is something we all remember as adults. But when you live in Vancouver Island's remote wilderness, there are dangers that pose a real threat. Whilst the children play, a cougar stalks in the bordering woodland. Its eyes lock onto one young boy. His fate is sealed. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying mountain lion attack on Jeremy Williams. Welcome to Final Affliction. At just 8 years old, Jeremy Williams attended his local Cukit elementary school, along with his 4-year-old brother Daniel. They were members of the native Cukit people. Their father also taught at the school in the isolated community on British Columbia's Vancouver Island. Belonging to a community steeped in tradition and rich in culture, Jeremy and Daniel were two of the 300 First Nation people living in the village. The rural, isolated community was situated 140 miles northwest of Victoria, surrounded by beautiful wilderness. Cukit is the most northwesterly contemporary settlement of the Nootka-speaking natives. It is a fishing village. The food of the ocean has provided for the community for generations. The First Nations people came there over 4,000 years ago. They were drawn by the rich sea life, natural resources, mild climate, and the beautiful surroundings. But in those surroundings were hidden dangers. Wild animals lurked. Most turned away at the first sight of a human, but for others, they were bold and brazen. They posed a real risk, especially to those who wandered off alone. The close proximity of the school to the wilderness was a concern for parents. They had repeatedly asked school governors to erect a fence around the school and its grounds. They knew that wild animals were common in the area, and they believed that it was only a matter of time before an attack on the school children. Sadly, they were right. During the recent weeks, there had been more and more cougar sightings on Vancouver Island. The cats were naturally curious animals, and some had little fear of humans. They approached walkers, cyclists, and even wildlife rangers. The advice was always to stand still, wave your arms above your head, and shout. Never turn your back on a cougar and try and throw something at it. Any small children should be picked up. Typically, they will run away. Usually, they are just interested in something you're carrying rather than you, such as food in your backpack. But if they see you as the prey, then that is a whole different story. A mountain lion that is stalking you is not merely curious. They want a meal. On a Tuesday morning in May 1992, Jeremy was playing with his brother Daniel and their two friends in the school playground. Their father, who was one of the teachers at the school, was inside the building. He could hear the children playing and would sometimes look out through the windows and catch his two boys running around with the others. But he wasn't the only one watching the children playing that morning. A cougar had been drawn to the shrieks and cries of the young children as they played outside during recess. Jeremy sat down on a grassy bank on the edge of the playground, whilst the other children continued to run around behind him. He looked out at the surrounding woodland, but he failed to spot the camouflaged cat in the undergrowth. The cougar locked its eyes onto the small boy. It was a female, just a yearling. She was likely hunting on her own for one of the first times. Mountain lions typically remain with their mothers until between the ages of 14 to 21 months. As a yearling, she can't have been independent for very long. She was an inexperienced hunter, but an opportunistic one of the most dangerous of her kind. Cougars are hypercarnivores, meaning that they only eat meat. In Yellowstone National Park, they compete with wolves for elk and deer. Elsewhere, they also hunt smaller mammals such as raccoons, porcupines, and wild turkeys. But they typically hunt at night or during dusk and dawn. So why was this one out in the day? Perhaps it had had an unsuccessful night on the hunt. Perhaps it was very, very hungry. The cougar crouched down low, her belly inches from the ground. Slowly she crept forwards in the undergrowth, her footsteps silent on the ground, her eyes unblinking. Then she made a dash for it, suddenly running from the woodland towards the boy. She covered the open ground between Jeremy and herself in a second. A flash of brown caught Jeremy's eye, and he looked up and screamed as he saw the 60-pound, 27-kilogram mountain lion launch itself at him. He didn't have time to get up and run. It jumped on top of him, instinctively going for the neck. Her claws dug into his body, and the long canines pierced his throat as it mauled him. The other children screamed and all made a run for the school building. Some rushed inside, shouting for help. They knew their friend was in.
Why are they out that deep? Like, why is nobody watching these kids? You was at school. I'd be hot. And not only that, the dad worked there. So it's like, what the fuck was y'all doing?
Serious trouble. It was pandemonium. Jeremy was trying to fight back, but he was too small in comparison to the wild cat. He didn't stand a chance. The weight of her body pinned him down, and when she closed her jaws around his throat, he had just seconds to live. Kevin Williams, Jeremy's father, heard the chaos outside and ran to the playground. There, he saw his eldest son underneath the beige-brown cat, his head in its jaws. He ran at the mountain lion, yelling and shouting, trying desperately to distract it and scare it away. He tried to find something to throw at it as he rushed forwards, but time was running out. Although only seconds passed in reality, time seemed to stand still. The attack seemed to go on forever, with Kevin feeling powerless to stop it. Then the school janitor, also hearing the terrified screams of the school children, came running outside with his rifle. He lifted it, took aim, and fired a single shot. The cougar collapsed on the ground next to the youngster, but it was too late. It had already delivered its fatal bite. There was nothing Kevin could do for his son. He held the boy, limp in his arms, whilst his 4-year-old son, Daniel, Jeremy's younger brother, watched on. The death of one of their own shook the close-knit Cukit community. It was a tragedy that could so easily have been avoided. Richard Leo, a Cukit Indian chief, told the authorities that
it's time to make money moves.
Like,
switch to Shopify
now,
and get up to $5,000.
that parents were furious at the school board for not protecting the children from the threat of wild animals. There weren't just cougars out there. There were bears and wolves. Richard said that no pupils would be returning to the school until they had assurances that a fence will be erected around its grounds. Being surrounded by prime cougar and bear habitat, their children needed to be kept safe. A dozen children were in the playground that day. They witnessed one of their friends being killed right before their eyes. And for Daniel,
crazy.
He had watched in horror as his older brother was mauled just feet from where he stood. Professional counseling was provided for those children, and there was an outpouring of support from the local community. It was a tragedy that will never be forgotten by those in Cukit. There are some 4,000 cougars in the whole of Canada, 3,500 of which are found in British Columbia. Vancouver Island has the highest concentration of cougars in the world, with around 800 calling the island home. In the past 100 years, 5 people have lost their lives to the mountain lions in British Columbia. Surprisingly, all but one of these occurred on Vancouver Island. During the same period, 29 non-fatal attacks occurred in British Columbia, 20 of which were on the island. The majority of these were on children under the age of 16. Although these attacks are devastating for all involved, they are...
Why are people letting their kids just walk out and act like there ain't mountain lions out there? What the fuck is wrong with you guys? Do you not want kids no more? Is that why you just do it? Like, oh damn, I hope he get eaten. I'm tired of this motherfucker. Like, damn.
Actually exceedingly rare, but it is the elusiveness of the cougars that makes them so terrifying. Knowing that they are out there and that they are born predators with the ability to take down a 600-pound moose. Most Canadians will never see one, but for those that do, it often comes along with their terrifying final affliction.
Hey, if you made it this far, like, comment, share, and hit that sub button. RP that little boy who lost his life that day to something that could have been avoided. Like, that's crazy. But, and also, send prayers out to the family who lost their child. But yeah, we gonna get it with you in the next video, gang.